Future Dana here. We're trying to reach 10,000 subscribers, and you can help us out by sharing the channel and clicking the subscribe button. And when we reach 10,000, we're going to do a giveaway. So if you want to know what that's about, help us out. Hi, Dana here. Welcome to Solo and Create. I'm glad you joined us today. And if you like what you see, please be sure you click that subscribe button and a thumbs up to say you like this video. We also have a Patreon page where you can support us in that way with multiple tiers. And on my Etsy shop, I have sewing kits for most of the tutorials that we have here on the channel. For today's project, we're going to be doing an upcycling project using men's ties. We're making this crossbody bag, which is simple and easy to grab for someplace quick on the go. If you have an upcycling project that you've done in the past, leave a comment below and share it with the community. Also, if you have an upcycle project you'd like for me to try on the channel, leave a comment about that one also. So, let's get started. For today's project, to make the tie purse, you're going to need the following supplies. You're going to need 2 neckties, and because you're going to put them together, but you want your neckties to be a little wider across the bottom. This one would work, but your purse would be very, very skinny. So you want to make sure that it's about, let's measure that. It's about 4 inches wide at the bottom. Those work the best because then it gives your purse enough width for it to really be functional. So you're going to need 2 neckties that coordinate. And neckties, of course, are usually pretty bold, but you can find some that just you like the coordinating look of them. So I have these 2, and I like to look for ones that have the same color family in them. And you want one can have kind of a pretty bold design and one have a less bold design, and that works well. And then this one, I kind of went with the brown color family. And again, those are both wide at the bottom. And then this one, if you can find them, they're a little harder to find, but if you can find a wide tie that is a solid color, then of course you could put that with anything. And I get my ties at the thrift store, but you could also use ties from your husband or dad that they're just getting rid of, and that works really well. So the first thing you're going to do is you're going to take your 2 ties and you're going to turn it over. And any tags or anything, you're probably going to want to remove so that when you put stuff in your purse, then it doesn't get caught on that. So I'm going to remove this tag from saying who made the tie. And you just want to use a seam ripper. And you want to make sure that you're getting the stitches for the tag and not the actual tie fabric. And usually these tags are only sewn in 4 corners, which means they're really easy to remove. There we go. And then I'm also going to remove this tab here because when I'm putting stuff in my purse, then stuff can get caught on that pretty easily. I'm just going to remove that. This is a little tricky to remove it in multiple places. Just being careful again not to cut my tie with my seam ripper. I'm just trying to get those threads. There we go. Now I'm going to save this Roundtree and York tag because on my sample I took my tie tag and put it on the front of my purse as kind of a decoration. So you could save that if you wanted to and use it on the front. So then you're going to take your ties and you're going to line them up with the points going opposite directions. Oh, here's another tag. I didn't see that one. We've got our tie going opposite directions, and we need to make sure that our overlap right here is 17 inches. And the reason for that is because then when you fold your tie up to make your purse, you've got it where it's deep enough for it to be functional. So you want 17 inches, which I know is kind of hard to see on this mat. You want 17 inches, not from the tip. You're going to go from this area of the tie to this area of the tie. You want that to be 17 inches because your tips you're going to fold down. So kind of put it there And then I'm going to go 17 inches. And that's just kind of an approximate. It doesn't have to be exact. So I have one point at this direction. My other point is that direction, which I know, again, is kind of hard to see on this mat. Then I'm going to take, and this you will have to use pins, and I'm going to pin those together right next to each other. Because when we go to the machine, we're going to start right here at this point. We're going to drop down and we're going to start, because I'm going to fold this part back. So I'm going to start about right there, and we're going to do a zigzag stitch across both of those ties to join them. And then when we get to this end, again, I'm going to kind of gauge that, and I'm going to stop right here, leaving this flap, the point, open and loose, so we can fold it down later. So we're going to go to the machine and set it up for a zigzag. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to set our machine up for a zigzag, and each machine is slightly different, so you need to look at your book to see how it's done. But basically, it usually has on your machine somewhere, it tells you what your zigzag is. And so I turn, mine is a dial, so I turn it to C, which matches this. And then I need to set my stitch width, and that's usually a dial or someplace at the top. And that is how far across, back and forth, your zigzag goes. So I don't want this a real wide one, so I'm going to put it on a 4. Now that our machine is ready for a zigzag stitch, I did off camera flip my ties and pinned them from the front rather than the back, because I want to stitch from the front, because my particular machine has a prettier stitch on the front than it does on the bobbin. So I'm going to turn my ties and I'm going to line them up. And those ties are just butted right up next to each other, so there's no overlap. And I want to make sure that I put the center of my foot, mine has a little triangle, it's probably hard to see on camera, but it has a little triangle there to show me where the center. And I want to make sure that that is in the center, right on that seam or the joint where the two ties butt up next to each other, because I want the zigzag to cross that area when it goes back and forth. And then I'm doing a pretty tight zigzag, so I want my stitches closer together so that it makes a nice seam here. So I'm going to just start, take that pin out, and I just want to go back and forth across. And I'm going to go kind of slow, because I want to make sure that if I need to adjust those ties, that I can. Trying to keep it this where they're joined or butted up next to each other, right in the center there. Then when I get back to this end, then I'm going to stitch, and I'm going to do a little bit of a back stitch right here at the top. And I used a coordinating thread to show you that when you stitch it, you really won't even see that stitching once you're finished project. I used a lighter color thread on my sample so you could see how they're joined. So if I wanted to add this, I like this tag better than the other one. If I wanted to add that tag, now is the time I would need to do that. So I would need to fold my purse up so I can kind of see where I wanted to put that and decide which side. And I kind of like this side better. So I just want those tips to be kind of lined up here at the top, because I am going to fold this one down and I'm going to fold that one down. So this is actually the top of my purse. And then I would need to just decide where I wanted to put that label and put it in place on one side. And then I'm going to pin that. Only going through the top layer of my purse. So I'm going through just the top layer, and I want to put that label right there. So I'm going to set my machine back up for a straight stitch. I'm going to open it up, and I'm going to just stitch this label right onto the front of the purse. You could sew this on by hand if you wanted to after your purse was put together, but I just find it just as easy to do it with the machine. And I'm just going all the way around that outside edge. And when I come back around, we want to make sure my ends of my ties don't get caught up underneath there, because that's easily done. I'm going to just cross that stitching and back stitch just to lock it all in place. Now we'll go back to the mat for the next step. Now we put our two ties together and we've added our label here on the front. So the next thing we're going to do is take our ties and right sides together. We're going to fold our ties up to create our purse. And I want to make sure that the right sides are together, because we're going to stitch down the sides and then flip it so you don't see those side seams. And you just want to kind of line it up. Now, as you notice, ties are kind of, when you put them together, they're not straight because they're angled, so your purse sides will not be straight up and down. They kind of angle out toward the bottom. And I just want to make sure that when I fold that back, and I kind of like to do it like this, that the top of my purse kind of matches across here. But I don't want that folded because it would get caught in that seam. So I'm going to start my stitching right here, kind of straight across there. And I'm going to clip her on both sides. I'm going to start pretty close, not right on that point, but just underneath that point, so that when I fold it, it's got a little bit of space to do that. And then when we go to the machine, we're going to do a straight stitch down this. So we need to be sure, if you haven't sewn a label, that you put your machine back to a straight stitch, not a zigzag. So let's go to the machine. Again, I'm going to start just below, doing my straight stitch just below that corner, so when I flip this back, then it has room to flip. So I'm going to line it up here, and I'm doing a straight stitch, and I'm going to use the full width of my machine foot as my seam allowance, which is just a little over 1/4 of an inch. And I'm going to stitch, and then I'm going to back stitch so that it secures it right here at the top. And then when I get to the bottom, I'm going to go real close to that edge, almost all the way off, back stitch, and then go all the way off. again to just secure it in place. And I'm going to flip it. And on this one, I'm going to come from this end just because it's easier on my machine. I'm going to start just off of the ties. I'm going to stitch, back stitch, and then go forward again. And then when I get to this top, I want to stop just below this point on the tie. And back stitch. Now we'll go back to the mat, flip it right side out, and add our buttons. Now we've stitched down both sides and we're ready to turn our project right side out. So we're just going to turn it right side out. I'm going to use my chopstick to get the corners. And remember, anytime you're doing this with your chopstick, you just want to push gently, not really, really rough. So I want those corners to come out at the bottom. There we go. And now our bag is put together. So the last thing we're going to do is we're going to fold these points down to make the top of our bag. If you like the look of it being just loose like that, you can certainly leave it. But I wanted to add a little bit more of a design element to mine. So I'm going to fold those points down, and I'm going to hold it in place, I'm going to add a button. So I'm going to add, and this is another area of design. So if you want it to be understated, I would probably add the blue. If I wanted it to be another little bit of pop of color, then I would probably add the red. And I kind of like this red. So we're going to take, I'm going to put my button in place. Then when I sew the button, I'm going to come from the inside and just stitch my button through all of my layers. And you just need to do that about 2 or 3 times till your button is secure and your flap is also secure. First part, find the button, hold and come back from the back side. And do it a couple more times, just make sure that it's nice and secure. Because remember, it's also holding your flap down. There we go. And I'm just going to tie that off. And I like to do a double knot when I tie my buttons off. There we go. So that's the front of my bag with my button embellishment and my tag. And then I'm going to flip it over, and I also want to sew this flap down. But this flap, I can just sew right here at the tip, and it leaves it a little loose. So I'm going to use the same thread. But this one, I don't want to go through all of my layers because I'm not securing a button or anything. So I want to start and just go up underneath the tip of this on the outside. And I'm just going to sew it to the outside layer. So I'm not going all the way through. I'm just going right here on this tip. And I want to make sure that I kind of get it positioned in the right spot. And I'm just going through the top layer of that tie. And it only takes a few stitches to keep that secure, and then I can just tie that off. Now both of my points are secure. There's the back. Here's the front with my button. And then the last thing you want to do is you want to pull your straps to where they're straight. So your inside of your ends of your ties would be together. And then I just tie a knot at the end. And that way it's adjustable if you want it to be a little bit longer and closer to your hip when you wear it, or if you want it to be a little shorter. And sometimes if I make it shorter, then I'll tie a big bow with my ends. So our project is complete. I hope you liked today's project, the Upcycled Tie Purse. And if you have a upcycle project you would like to share with the community, be sure you leave that in the comments. Or again, if you have one you'd like to try on the channel, be sure you leave a comment about that below also. So, see you in the next one.